Welcome to MrClaff.com's review of the Articles of Confederation and the Constitutional Convention, brought to you by Noble Review, concise review books. After the surrender of the British at Yorktown, the United States had the task of drawing up some rules for their new government. The first blueprint was called the Articles of Confederation and was written by John Dickinson of Pennsylvania. The Articles lasted from 1781 to 1789. An achievement of the Articles is a plan for adding new states in the West. The Land Ordinance of 1785 divided land into townships of 36 sections for purchase. The Northwest Ordinance of 1787 was of greater importance, as it provided statehood for areas that reached 60,000 inhabitants. There would also be no slavery allowed in these Northwest territories. Despite the Revolutionary War ending under the Articles, there were serious issues. Under the Articles, each state could coin its own money, there was no executive branch, the government could not regulate interstate commerce, there was no national court system, 9 of 13 states had to agree to pass a law, 13 of 13 had to agree to pass an amendment. In addition, there was no army. This lack of an army meant that the United States could not put down Daniel Shays' rebellion in Massachusetts. The rebellion was a riot led by farmers protesting imprisonment for debt, lack of currency, and high taxes. The local state militia ended the violence. After a weak Annapolis Convention was held, 55 delegates assembled in Philadelphia in 1787. Their goal was to amend the Articles of Confederation, but they scrapped them. You should know 3 major compromises of the Philadelphia Convention. First, there was the Great or Connecticut Compromise. On one side was James Madison and his Virginia Plan. He wanted a bicameral or two-house legislature where the most populous states would have more of a say in creating laws. William Patterson's New Jersey plan looked for equal representation. Hence, the Great Compromise. There would be 2 houses to make laws, a House of Representatives where the most populous states would have greater representation, and a Senate where each state would have 2 senators. New problem. If representation is based on population in the House, do slaves count in the census that is taken every 10 years? The South wanted slaves to count for representation but not taxation. The northern states wanted the opposite. Thus, a 3/5 compromise was reached where slaves would count as 3/5 of a person for both taxation and representation. Note, in the Constitution, the Atlantic slave trade would only continue for 20 more years, until 1808. Lastly, the Commercial Compromise was an agreement to only tax imports, not exports. This tax would be called a tariff. The delegates were divided between those who wanted a stronger government, or Federalists, and those who wanted more power to rest with the states, or anti-federalists. 9 of the 13 states needed to ratify the Constitution for it to go into effect. To convince New York, Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and John Jay wrote the Federalist, or Federalist Papers, in favor of the Constitution. Madison's Federalist No. 10 explained how factions, or large groups of people, would counterbalance any tyranny from other groups. There was also a promise to draft a Bill of Rights, which would protect important freedoms, such as speech, religion, rights to bear arms, due process, and prevention of cruel and unusual punishment. These would be the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, coming later in 1791. The Constitution was ratified and is still the highest law of the land. For more review, you can find free flashcards and review sheets on MrClaff.com. We also invite you to check out the Noble Review in both paperback and e-book formats. Best of luck on your tests.